Ever used the power of teamwork, friendship, and sportsmanlike conduct to save the world from a brainwashed army of teenagers? No? Well, has your student body president ever wielded a katana openly in the halls? No to that too, huh? Man, I don't think you're cut out for high school around these parts. Can you at least launch a fireball from your palm heels? Are you skilled in the martial arts? Do you know any team-up techniques? How hot is your burning vigor? If this all sounds like too much for you, then you definitely wouldn't last a day getting an education in the world of rival schools. So take anime. Just like the general concept of anime. Now add fighting. Now put it in high school and make it about a bunch of different high schools fighting over something anime-like in nature. Congratulations, you have just invented Rival Schools. This is such a bog-standard concept for a game, yet I can't help but adore it for its cheesy and derivative nature. This is anime slop in video game form, and I love these games to their very core, but that includes admitting that the core concept here was old hat even back in its day. Now before I get into the details here, I would like to briefly point out that my experience with the original Rival Schools came from the 2-disc American release, wherein I almost exclusively played the secondary Evolution disc. I feel the need to stress that I had no idea what this game was about, or had so much as even heard of it at the time of first playing it. I don't even know what compelled me to choose the Evolution disc over the arcade disc. That's just the choice I made. While I will refer to the arcade disc specifically in some sections, my overall opinions and experiences will be based on the Evolution disc. The game opens with a wonderful animated intro accompanied by a most excellent song, wherein we see our protagonist's mother being kidnapped by his high school principal, who's some kind of ogre, but we'll get there eventually, I promise. And so, with the kidnapping of the very woman who brought him into this world, he sets out on a quest for justice. Also, Batsu, dude, would it kill you to help your mom with that sink? You seem like a mechanically inclined kid. Grab a wrench and fix that leak. Water ain't free, bozo. After being informed that the only thing we'll need on our quest is justice, we are treated to a montage of some of the different characters involved, including a glimpse of the actual mastermind behind the events of the game, before having the title of the game yelled at you and being shunted to the menu screen. Being an eager teenager at the time, I forewent looking at anything else and jumped straight into the game. First thing that pops out at you is the sheer size of the roster. Out the gate you get 20 to choose from, and while the thumbnails provide very little information about who you're picking, it at least promises you a wide range of options. While we're here, I suppose we'll take the time to look at the characters and go over them briefly. Since they are grouped by high school, I will introduce them in their respective groups. Let's get into this. We start with our protagonist and the main group the events focus on. Batsu Ichimonji is a recent transfer to Taiyo High School, and it's his mother that gets kidnapped. Based on his outfit, it looks like he's some kind of mechanic, but the game never really sheds any light on this, and that applies to the majority of the characters here. He's your typical Shoto analog, a Ryu type with a decent range of projectiles to trap your enemies with. Solid choice for your first time playing. Next up from Taiyo High, we have Hinata Wakaba, a first-year student who teams up with Batsu to find his missing mama. She's a stereotypical teeny schoolgirl, and I hate her. Not for being a tiny schoolchild, mind you, but for how brutal she is to fight against. This little strumpet kicks flaming shoes at you, and the nature of her attacks gives her a wide arc which, in a 3D fighter, is a major advantage. She's quick, brutal, and will kick hundreds of shoes at you. You'll come to hate her too. Thirdly, we got Kyosuke Kagami. He wears glasses. That's basically his entire character as presented in the game. He's also a first-year student, and is apparently a part of the Morals Committee, whatever the hell that is. It is later revealed that he's twin brother to another one of the game's characters, although I don't want to spoil too much just yet. It bears mentioning that all the colorful and cool characters we're about to go over, it's this one that received the honor of showing up in any other fighting games, at least at first. I guess he must have been a fan favorite for this game back home, because while his moves are pretty versatile and he's a solid character to use, I find him incredibly vanilla and lame in terms of personality and presentation. I don't get it. Finally, rounding out the offerings from Taiyo High School, we have one of my personal favorites, Hayato Neketsu. He was an exclusive character for the PlayStation port and is the PE teacher from Taiyo High. He wields a kendo stick and has a super move where he makes the enemy drop and give him push-ups before he smacks them into oblivion. Love this guy. And the push-up move invokes feelings of shame in your opponent when successfully applied.
A shameful display!
Here now we move on to Gorin High School, the sporty school of the bunch. I really appreciate that every school more or less follows some ridiculous theme. It really lets you know what to expect from the various alumni. Beginning the roster from Gorin, we have Shoma Sawamura, some kind of baseball prodigy, and someone who could have also served as the game's protagonist, to be honest. This guy was a clear fan favorite from my personal experience with the game, and the reason is obvious. Shoma has a giant buster sword of a baseball bat. Seriously, this looks like the bat Guts would use if they played baseball in Berserk. It's got stupid range and does decent damage, and as if that wasn't enough, he gets projectiles in the form of baseballs. Another solid choice for a first-time player. He's on a mission to find out who beat up his older brother Shuichi. Up next we have Natsu Ayuhara, the volleyball girl. She's a menace to fight against, with lots of rushing low attacks that like to home in on you, and some decent aerial defense for when you inevitably try to jump in over her attacks. As you expect, she can and will launch volleyballs at you until you're an unconscious heap on the floor of the gym. Solid all-rounder who I also hate fighting against. Finishing up the roster from Gorin High School, we have Roberto Miura, the soccer player. This guy is actually nasty with it, between kicking soccer balls at you, various sliding attacks, and some wicked close-range combos wherein he juggles you like a soccer ball, makes this guy an all-around menace. Fun to play as, not so fun to face off against. Moving on, we now arrive at the steps of Pacific High School, which is some kind of school full of transfer students or something. I still don't really understand the logistics of the educational system in this game. We start off with Roy Bromwell, an American football player whose father requested he investigate the various disappearances and attacks occurring. Kind of a weird request from your dad. And he kind of looks like Fred from Scooby-Doo, but he plays more like a cross between Deion Sanders and Ken Masters. His moveset is a lot of fun, and his voice lines are hilarious in the way that only fighting games can provide. Great pick. With the star quarterback without his sycophant cheerleader groupie, Tiffany Lords fills this slot, being your stereotypical American cheerleader with big bubbly personalities and some giant boxing gloves to match. Don't let her looks distract or even fool you. She can be a genuine threat once she starts opening up on you. She's got some goofy punch combos that will leave you upset every time she connects with them, and her voice lines are as goofy as her punch combos. She's helping Roy in the hopes of getting his attention, a classic trope. Ending the lineup for Pacific Eye, we have Bowman Delgado, an absolute mountain of a child and apparently a pastor in training. The game's manual makes mention of how Bowman feels that all the fighting and brutalizing doesn't line up with his morals, but not enough to make him stop pounding people's heads in. In a thematically interesting choice, one of his super moves has him spinning and ascending his way to the heavens. Surely this was a deliberate decision. Being the first XL fighter in the game we're taking a look at, it bears mentioning that he and others of his size have an inherent weakness in a 3D fighter in that they present a much larger hitbox at all times, making them easier to punish even with an off-center attack. As such, this makes him kind of a pushover to deal with. But now we move on to the second row, and we start getting to some of the more interesting characters for sure, as well as what are some of my personal favorites. And we start with none other than one of my all-time GOATs, Eiji Edge Yamada. He's a local thug from Gato High School, whose school looks like it's in Midgar somewhere, I shit you not, and is out looking for his gang's boss, who is among those that have disappeared. Now, I'll come out and say this. I seem to have a thing for characters in fighting games who have knives of any sort. I love Edge over here. In King of Fighters, I love using Ryuji Yamazaki. In Street Fighter, I main Vega. It's just a pattern that's developed over the years. I can't explain it. But as his name suggests, Edge has an infinite number of knives in his pockets, and he can fire them off in rapid succession. A few nifty diving attacks and his ability to kick sand at his enemy make him my go-to, even if I'm admittedly not the best with him. Next is the motorcycle helmet wearing Akira Kazama, a first-year student who claims to be the younger brother of the missing Ghetto High gang leader. Now, this was always a little confusing to me, mainly because I started with the Evolution disc instead of the arcade disc, and the gang's leader is a playable character in the expanded release. Whereas in the arcade version, the gang's leader only shows up near the end of their story. Anyways, it was eventually revealed that Akita is actually the younger sister of the gang's leader. This allowed them to let her occupy 2 slots on the roster while having the exact same moveset. The only difference being that the second one has no motorcycle helmet, and their name is spelled in all lowercase instead. Kind of a waste, this could have just been an alternate costume. The character's fine, the moveset is decent enough, but I just never felt drawn to play as them a whole lot. Gani Tsurugi is another mountainous child in the game's roster, this one being a sumo wrestler. While this makes him fun to play as occasionally, he suffers from the same problem of being a giant hitbox, and once again is generally a pushover to deal with. Not much to talk about here, he's a big guy.
For you.
Our final entry from Gedo High is none other than the gang's leader himself, Daigo Kazama. While he looks to be a 40-year-old Yakuza, he's actually another teenager who cares deeply about his community and began to investigate the attacks and disappearances on his own. I love how many tropes are layered onto this game, it's so dumb and schlocky. This guy is another one of my favorites. It's a little awkward to play with as he's kinda slow, but his moves hit hard and his aura is impeccable. He feels like a JoJo character, or some one-off from Baki. He's in my top 5 for sure. And now finally, we arrive at the epicenter of all of this. Justice High School. What a name. And what a roster, because this is where the really bonkers characters are hiding. We'll start with Hideo Shimazu, the Japanese language teacher. Honestly, I always thought he was a math teacher, seeing as how he looks almost identical to Edward James Olmos' character in Stand and Deliver. And really, what that movie needed was a fight scene where Olmos launches a fireball at Lou Diamond Phillips because he's bad at calculus. Hideo is nasty, both to control and to face. His uppercuts do insane damage, with his super uppercut doing something like 40 to 60% damage on a full connect. The timing for his fireballs is a little slower than the others too, and this slight difference in launch time can trip you up when you're trying to dodge his projectile spam. He's also got a hurricane kick analog that's good for 360-degree offense and defense as well, making him a tough all-rounder to put down. If you want an easy time beating this game, pick Hideo. After getting annihilated by Hideo, you might be tempted to seek out the school nurse for some medical attention. At Justice High, this would be a mistake, as that would put you within the reach of none other than Kyoko Minazuki, a long-legged and pissed-off school nurse who will disassemble you while beating your head in with a clipboard. She has a lot of sweeping and diving attacks, as well as some nasty pop-up attacks thanks to her long-ass legs. While I don't particularly enjoy playing as her, I have to respect the threat she represents. One badass lady, to be sure. Once you've been mangled by the school nurse, you may feel inclined to report these two faculty members to the school's principal for assault. This will put you face to face with Raitso Imawano, a behemoth of a man who more resembles a yeti than a school administrator. The game chooses to offset his giant hitboxiness by giving him some outlandishly fast attacks for someone his size, and a lot of his moves are designed to let him close gaps quickly. A decent challenge, but not as tough as he seems most of the time. Exploit the 3D nature of the arena and this guy is a wash. He appears to be the one behind the disappearances and attacks, as he is seen kidnapping Batsu's mother in the opening cinematic. And the last entry for Justice High is a little tricky, as to face him you need to defeat Raitso with a team-up attack. He is none other than Hio Imawano, the student body president, I think, of Justice High and the actual mastermind behind the events of the game. It's revealed that he is actually the twin brother of Kyosuke, and, to make this even messier, you find out that Raitso is actually Batsu's father, making Batsu and Hio and Kyosuke cousins. What in the actual hell is this story even doing here? This is some daytime TV Maury Povich type shit. Anyways, Hio is a badass to play as. His sword gives him some nice range, even though it's a little slow to wield, and he's got what's, in my eyes, one of the coolest attacks in video game history, wherein his desire to beat your ass is so great that he splits into two to do it. It feels cheap because he is the final boss, but I love playing as this dude, and will often reach for him when I start losing too many times in a row. There's one more entry on this list, none other than Street Fighter alum Sakura Kasugano. Being a schoolgirl herself, she's a perfect fit for the game and fits right into the roster. She's positioned as a friend of Hinata and Natsu, making them the game's unofficial girl power trio. She's the same old Sakura for better or for worse, but I do appreciate her inclusion here all the same. I needed to take the time to explain all the players involved as they form the core of this game's identity and are the platform for this game's performance. As you've probably guessed by now, I love this game. A lot. To this day it remains one of my all-time favorite 3D fighters of the era, and is in my top 5 fighting games of all time. The level of charm this game oozes out of every pore is off the charts, and it's hard not to find something to love. The animated segments in particular take this game a long way in terms of giving it an identity, but as we're about to dive into, the whole package feels so cohesive. This game comes together just marvelously. The high school aesthetic puts in a lot of work here, even with a lot of the characters looking far too old to still be in high school, let alone first-year students. This, to me, harkens back to that classic Hollywood trope of 30-somethings playing high schoolers, and it never fails to give a humorous lean to the proceedings. The XL characters seem particularly outrageous too, given this context. While Raitso is an old man, Bowman in particular feels like he needs calling out. He looks like a 45-year-old man masquerading as a high school student. Someone come get their dad. The levels all feed into the school theme, with the majority of the game's levels taking place somewhere on the various school grounds. I also feel the need to single out Gato High's level, which while it's labeled as a construction site, it really looks more like some random corner out of Midgar in Final Fantasy VII. I know I mentioned it before, but I really feel like this needs to be pointed out. It looks like the school sits directly across from some kind of oil refinery or a chemical plant. I get that Gato High is supposed to be the school on the wrong side of the tracks, but damn, this looks like something out of RoboCop's Detroit. No wonder the kids from Gato are so tough. They probably play in toxic waste during recess. While the levels aren't exactly super technical or highly detailed, consisting of your standard 3D plane with a 2D background, they are thematically consistent and do the job well enough. The game uses the 4-button attack system from Star Gladiator and plays like a 3D Marvel vs. Capcom clone. Every character has a unique team-up attack, wherein their secondary comes into the fight to either attack the opponent, restore your special meter, or even provide healing. These are powerful tools that can easily turn the tide of a fight and only cost 2 levels of vigor to perform. The CPU will lean heavily on these, and quite frankly, so should you. With the exception of Heal's team up, which ends up in an attack that damages both you and your opponent, these will almost always leave you in a more advantageous position, provided you don't whiff it. Particularly nasty are the ones which restore your vigor, as these will allow you to spam supers to your heart's content. Some of these are played more for comedic effect, while others are just straight up ass whooping. Every character also has a few pop-up attacks, allowing you to set up and launch some pretty cool aerial combos. Luckily, the game features some nifty defensive features for some other Capcom titles to help you survive. The Alpha counter system from Street Fighter Alpha is more or less present here in the form of a tardy counter, and while mechanically they're a little different, it still allows you to immediately counterattack from a block position. The rules surrounding the tardy counter are pretty loose, with any hard, normal, special, or super attack able to be used to perform a tardy counter. Alpha counters themselves are limited to certain special moves for each character, and tardy counters don't cost any vigor to perform, whereas alpha counters require at least 1 level of your super combo gauge. There's also attack cancels, wherein a player can cancel an incoming attack with one of their own. This will nullify the damage from both attacks, but won't stop a multi-hit combo from being performed. Meaning that if you time it right, you can attack cancel entire combo strings for some serious aura farming moments. To boot, performing successful attack cancels grants you a bar of vigor as a reward for your impeccable timing or luck, and can be a real pro way of restoring your super levels. Lastly, there's the safe fall mechanic, which allows you to essentially roll back onto your feet and bypass the laying flat on the floor phase of fighting games. While you won't always be able to pull off a safe fall, it's a nice way to regain your momentum after catching an enemy attack. Plus, it looks pretty cool. The game definitely provides you with the tools you'll need to get the job done, and while some characters may have stronger moves than others, and a few have some deceptive hit ranges, they all feel pretty well balanced and you can easily get by with any one you choose. Granted, this is a Capcom game, so you would expect that level of competence, but it's nice to see all the same. So you've got a decent fighting system, a chunky roster, and some good levels. What about the music? Oh man, the music rocks. Put together by Capcom legend Setsuo Yamamoto, this soundtrack fits the goddamn bill. Lots of cheesy guitars, driving riffs, and excellent composition here. It's no surprise, the guy's got credits in over 85 games, including the NES version of Aladdin, Street Fighter Alpha 2, and a whole slew of JoJo games. He's still working as of this year, being the sound studio coordinator on Resident Evil Requiem. Rest assured, most if not all the music in this video is from this soundtrack, and they're all bops. The rest of the sound design matches this level of quality, with the character voice lines being appropriately hammy and over the top, with some interesting sound effects accompanying some of the attacks. This game is honestly an audio treat, which is great because the game looks like ass. At a distance, when you're fighting, the game looks pretty good. The specials and supers are all animated quite well, and the effects applied on them look good for the time frame. However, most of the game's victory poses involve a hard zoom on the victorious character in question, and goddamn do I wish it didn't sometimes. Some of these mugs are hard to look at, and some provoke genuine feelings of horror. I'm fully aware this is just a byproduct of the time period and platform this game is occupying, but just look at it. Look at it!
Oh my god, look at its fucking face! Look at its face!
Those are some hard seams and some pointy edges. The fact that only one character uses their hair as a weapon seems like a missed opportunity. Most of them have some razor points tucked away somewhere in their due. Those polygon budgets were really something else, man. But yeah, the game violently oscillates between this looks alright to oh my god no please get it away from me every fight. And that pendulum never stops swinging, so you better get used to it if you want to have a good time. Or don't, and grapple with the feelings of dread and horror that will sweep over you after every win sequence. A weird and disgusting little cherry atop your victory sundae. The story is sheer nonsense, and I love it. I've more or less dropped most of the major hints already, so let's just rip off this band-aid and get it over with. The game takes place in the fictional Aoharu City, which is, I guess, the Japanese version of any town USA, and a bunch of people are being kidnapped. And eventually the story reveals that the perpetrators are from the elite and hoity-toity school of Justice High. Defeating Raitso with a team-up attack reveals that the actual mastermind was Hio, who has been brainwashing people somehow, this is never explained, to form an army. The narrative structure of the single-player story in the arcade mode depended entirely on which characters you chose, with the initial arcade release only allowing you to pick 2 fighters from the same school. In the console port, you can choose any 2 fighters, although picking 2 fighters from different schools wouldn't allow you to progress their respective plots. This made multiple playthroughs of the arcade disc worthwhile, if for no other reason than to discover the different plot threads. The Evolution disc offers no narrative structure aside from 2 different ending cards, depending on whether you got the good ending or not. This is definitely an interesting way to deliver the story to your game, and while it maybe wasn't the most intuitive choice, it's definitely unique and has helped this game stick out in my memory, so there's something to be said about it. The Evolution disc also came with a slew of unlockables, and here's where some of my disappointment has come to rest, especially after doing the research. Upon beating the game the first time on the second disc with any character, you unlock a minigame where you play as Roberto and you're knocking down targets in a soccer goal for points. I'm almost ashamed to admit that I dumped a lot of time into this minigame, more time than I should have for sure. It's a fun little diversion, and a neat addition. There's more though. Beat the game with Shoma on the hardest difficulty and you unlock the home run mode, where you're swinging at pitches with the boy. Beat it with Natsu, and you unlock a volleyball mode in the same vein. Another one unlocks by beating it with Roberto, which is another soccer-themed minigame. There is one more, which requires you beating the game on maximum difficulty with Kyoko. This unlocks Kyoko's office, where you give and receive massages. Sure. Okay, why not? The Evolution Disc also features an extra 14 unlockable characters. They're just regular students who represent mashups of the different movesets, and you unlock an extra one with each completion of the game. There's some FUD to be had there, I guess, but learning why they're even there makes me a little sad. The Japanese version of the game featured a school life mode where you created your own character, and the different minigames were things your characters could do while in this mode, I'm assuming to increase stats of some sort. Capcom cited the amount of time it would take to translate it all into English as the main reason for the feature being cut, instead choosing to cobble the various bits of it together into a few unlockable minigames and some hodgepodge characters. It's a little disappointing, and makes me want to play a translated version of the Japanese release. I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but as of writing, I've yet to look for it. On a slightly more positive note, the game actually unlocks some characters for you to play with over time. Over the course of a few weeks, the game will begin unlocking characters for you to play with. A nice surprise, and definitely explains how I unlocked Sakura as a kid while never actually completing any objectives to do so. She literally just popped up in the roster one day. Neat. The Evolution Disc also features a bunch of miscellaneous features and modes, like a league mode, a tournament mode, a lesson mode for learning the ropes, and galleries with various loading screen art. Some of it is actually quite nice. While none of these will make or break your overall experience, it's nice to see them added in, even if I've never really had a desire for a round-robin tournament against the CPU. There's a fair bit of stuff to chew on here, and I can kind of see why I ended up spending so much time on this disc. It just presented me with so much stuff to see and do. I've been singing this game's praises so far. It's by no means perfect. A lot of the typical issues from early 3D fighters exist here, and they can be just as frustrating as ever. Hit detection can get pretty spotty sometimes, especially during hectic close quarters exchanges. An attack and a combo string might move your opponent off the center line, making the auto-targeting freak out and usually sending you whiffing past your opponent and allowing them to punish you pretty severely. Paying extra attention to your ranges helps mitigate this somewhat, but you're still going to find yourself being pulled one way or the other mid-combo from time to time. It will get you hurt. Navigating towards or away your opponent can occasionally be finicky, with the 3D free step sometimes successfully getting you out of the way of an attack and other times not. Some attacks seem to originate from behind your field of view, and it can be tough to read those attacks when you might not see them coming. The ranges on throws feel a little inconsistent as well sometimes, with some seemingly going straight through the character and others feeling like they grabbed you from way far away. And this annoyance extends to some of the team-up attack setups as well. The ranges vary, and you'll sometimes find yourself too close or too far while seemingly being neither. The AI loves its spam, and even on the lower levels will have no qualms about filling the screen with projectiles or using the same combos over and over. It will abuse team-up and burning vigor attacks to their fullest potential, and doubly so if the CPU has a teammate that can restore vigor. Get used to seeing these sequences. They will happen a lot. Keydale deserves his own section here, honestly. His power is diabolical and his uppercut will almost guarantee him a win. He can dominate the screen space with most of his attacks and never fails to give me issues. Decades of playing this game and Keydale still makes me switch characters multiple times. The ultimate disgrace. Edward James almost looking ass. Honestly though, these gripes are minor. I love this game enough to take those things in stride, and they've never been so bad that I've turned the game off before finishing my run. This game was and still is a treat, and if you haven't played it and like fighting games, you owe it to yourself to give this a whirl. I was so happy with this game as a kid, there was no way it could get any better. Until I read about the sequel. I was a pretty happy Dreamcast owner. I had a decent spread of games for it, for a bunch of different genres, and overall was pretty pleased with my library. Dreamcast had some great fighting games. Soul Calibur was incredible, as was Dead or Alive 2 and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Power Stone was pretty good as well, although not what I preferred. There was quite a bit of pugilistic violence already available for the Dreamcast, so imagine my surprise when I heard that Capcom was making a sequel for Rival Schools for it. Going by the title Project Justice, it promised to be everything the original was, but with smoother textures and a higher resolution. I was beyond excited. Project Justice was released, and within a few days I had rented it. I remember this vividly, because of my initial response. I didn't like it. Not at first anyways. It was essentially the same game, but something felt different to me. You picked 3 fighters instead of 2, and now there was a party-up attack in addition to the team-ups. And even the team-ups have been tweaked, where now the teammates had a chance to block the other from interfering in the fight, making for a more involved, intense team-up mechanic overall. But I don't know. I still don't know. It took me revisiting the game over the years to really appreciate it for what it was, but I distinctly remember feeling let down by it. Maybe it was because of the overall experience of the Evolution disc, feeling like a whole slew of stuff crammed into one CD. I don't really know, and even to this day I hold it in a lower regard than Rival Schools, when it is objectively the better game. There's nothing inherently wrong with Project Justice per se. I still play it about as often as I play the original, but to me it just feels like it's lacking some of the same charm. All of the characters are back, and there's a few new ones, some of which were available in the Japanese release of Rival Schools. And the game definitely benefits from the increase in fidelity that the Dreamcast provided. The character models look superb, and a little upscaling takes them a long way. The soundtrack is again a fantastic offering from Setsuo Yamamoto, and one track in particular might be my favorite out of both games. The team-up interrupt mechanic is wonderful, and the tension in only having a few seconds to land a blow and stop your rival from interfering in the match is second to none. Even the levels have received a tune-up, with the art style leaning more into the ridiculous nature of the world these kids inhabit. Maybe I'm not making sense. I've never quite figured out my feelings here. If you think you'll like Rival Schools, you will invariably like Project Justice. If I gave Rival Schools a 9, I give Project Justice an 8. Maybe it was the goofy Dreamcast controller. Maybe it's because I'm worse at it, or that it doesn't play quite the same as the first one. Whatever the case may be, it just didn't quite grab me the same way the original did. I mentioned earlier how the original had a character create/school life mode, and how I had yet to check it out. Well, in between writing that and this, I found out that there was a similar feature cut from the American release of Project Justice, and I very quickly found an English patched edition of this version. This might actually change my tune about Project Justice, but not for the ways you might expect. You see, one of my hidden shames and secret loves is my passion for the unbridled assholery of the misery simulators that are the Dokapon games. There's something so charming about these evil little games that has kept me playing them since I first got my hands on a translated copy of the PlayStation version. Project Justice's cut game mode is a Dokapon clone, where you create a student, pick a school, and go around the board leveling up their stats as well as their grades in various subjects. My joy in discovering this, as well as my disappointment in realizing how much I would have loved this back then, is immense. I'm not going to dedicate a whole segment diving into this game mode, but know that I might make a video on it someday. I love this crap, and I'm excited to plunk some hours into it. But this brings my score for Project Justice from an 8 to a 9 as well. This is an absolute treat, and I'm glad I decided to look into it. But regardless of my feelings for the sequel, this is a series I remember fondly and miss dearly. Would have loved to have seen another game in the Rival Schools universe at some point, but it's never happened again. It gets some minor love here and there, with Kyosuke being a playable character in Capcom vs SNK 2, and Batu being in Tatsunoko vs Capcom. Akira was also added to Street Fighter V during its 5th season, with her older brother Daigo making an appearance as her assist, as well as Edge and Gon having cameos in her stage. But that's it. That's all the love and recognition Capcom has given these games since their release, and it feels like a crime. It's not the only one either. There's a whole list of fighting games that are in a similar situation that I could go on about, but this is about Rival Schools. This was not a bad game, and was warmly received by players and critics alike. So why was it swept under the rug? Why so little recognition? I don't know. And I can't really find too much online that provides any kind of information one way or the other. They just spent their time and money to make these 2 excellent fighting games, only to never really look their way again. It's weird, and I don't pretend to understand it. I'm just grateful they even bothered at all. I love this stupid, goofy game. It's so dumb and charming, and most of the game has this bright color palette that makes it seem so cheery and fun, despite the somewhat serious nature of the game's plot. The game's themes about the positivity of youth, manipulation by adults, and examples of administrative corruption are almost drowned out by the exuberant and chipper tone this game presents you with 90% of the time, with the game's atmosphere resembling a summer before the storm kind of vibe that adds genuine impact to both games' final sequences. And that tonal dissonance is a huge part of this series' identity. Bright beaches and classrooms, the exaggerated enthusiasm of anime, and the cheerful colors and music all wrapped around a story about mind control, violence, social alienation, and exploitation. The dumb and idealistic point of view juxtaposed with such serious subject matter creates an atmosphere of whimsy throughout most of the game, and this game's school-centric art design gives it an iconic look not shared by many other fighters by comparison. The game occupies a unique place, too. The original sits at the beginning of the arcade sunset and represents that peak arcade-era optimism. Those pre-post-SNK and pre-esports days when arcades were about to slowly start to shutter their doors as the arcade experience had finally come to home consoles. This was also around the time that anime's influence was slowly beginning to become globally normalized, and is demonstrated succinctly in the game's uniquely Japanese romanticization of youth and school life. This also generally ties into the broader atmosphere of Japanese media in the late 90s. Stylish optimism masking anxiety, youth culture framed as being both hopeful and vulnerable, and institutions that appear bright and orderly on the outside while hiding rot within. Even that school setting lends the game to have a lot of thematic language that fighting games generally don't have access to. Things like growing up, friendship, identity, institutions, authority, and the concept that youth itself is a fleeting state to be cherished. This emotional texture is present in both games and makes them come alive. The soundtrack drives this home further by not just supporting the action, but by romanticizing the setting. The music truly magnifies the events of the game in a manner that mirrors the way that adolescence itself makes everything feel enormous. This is such a unique confluence of factors and influences, and Rival Schools sits right at the center of it. I know at the beginning of this I called this game bog standard, and I half meant that, but also half meant that as a joke. While the core concept might not be an original idea, all the factors feeding into it definitely are, and it really helps this game stand out a lot more. Truthfully, I don't know if I'd even want to see a remaster or a remake at this point. It's been so long. And this game encapsulates such a specific moment in gaming history that I don't know if it would do the game any justice to port it to modern systems or gussy up the graphics. As ugly as it can be at some intersections, and boy, it can be, I think the game stands proud where it is, and stands to gain nothing from being dragged into the modern age. It goes without saying, but I highly recommend these games if you haven't played them. No downbeat ending this time. These are fun games just begging to be played and laughed at and with. Go play, have fun, indulge in a bit of silliness. It's its own reward. And thanks again if you watched this and made it this far. This is one of those games I've been dying to talk about since I started this YouTube nonsense way back when. There's still more I want to discuss, but I want y'all to know that I've been putting together a separate list of suggestions based on the comments I'm getting, and I'm almost at the point where I want to start tossing those into the lineup. So if you've suggested something, I recommend you keep your eyes peeled for it in the coming months. So yeah, go play Rival Schools. It's fun. Take care of yourselves. Until the next time.